Hey, fans of freedom and open discussion, I'm heading over to Substack, and there's an ad-free audio and video version of The Adam Carolla Show that's going to be waiting there. In the near future, you'll even be able to watch ACS Live, unedited, as we record it, participate in the show via live chat. That'll be coming up very soon. You'll also get an ad-free version of the Adam Carolla and Dr. Drew Show. You'll also get an exclusive to my new podcast, Beat It Out, where I share unpolished ideas with my comedian buddies. The first series of episodes is going to be Jay Moore. You'll get all this and more for the low, low price of $9 a month, a pittance for all we're going to bring you. Subscribe now at adamcarolla.com/Substack, and I'll see all of you in our new speakeasy called Substack.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the Prosecutors. Today on the Prosecutors, we finish our look at the Pickton murders. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Prosecutors. I'm Brett, and I'm joined, as always, by my Miss Piggy of a co-host, Alice.
Much better than Porky. I'm not going to lie.
See?
Miss Piggy is way better. Miss Piggy's adorable. Porky, not. So, congratulations. You've not redeemed yourself.
One might say Miss Piggy is Porky, but that's okay.
Oh, Miss Piggy is wonderful.
She is wonderful.
We need
Married a frog.
We
Kinda
need
weird.
this levity
That's okay.
before we start, because this might be one of the most disturbing cases I've ever seen.
Yeah, I was going to bring some gummies up here, but I can't find them, so
No,
I don't know where they went.
no. Do you know what? It was like I couldn't stop thinking about gummies, and I went and ate some Haribo. I was like, there could be humans in here.
They could
but
be.
I still ate it. It was like in my mind, it was implanted. It had incepted into my mind that I wanted gummy bears. And then the whole time I was like, maybe there's human in here.
Could be. You never know.
If you guys missed the
Leftover
first episode, you should
human.
really go back.
Yeah, or else you're completely lost. You're like, what in the world? If this is your first time listening to the podcast, we'll start somewhere else. But if you want to listen to this case, make sure you listen to part one. Because it's something.
It's something else.
By the time this comes out, it'll be like the second week in November. So people will be getting ready for Thanksgiving. For us, today is the first day of October. So
It is. Happy
We are-
October 1st feels like fall, even though September 21st, I think, is actually the first day of fall. We are
I think
into fall.
some podcasts would fake it and just act like we recorded this yesterday and you're hearing our actual thoughts about the upcoming Thanksgiving, but not us. We're not going to do that to you. We're still very much in Halloween land, so enjoying it. But you guys, by the time you hear this, you'll have heard of the October episodes, and I hope you enjoyed them and I hope you had a great Halloween. Okay, are we ready to dive into this case?
We really are. It's
Alice?
actually amazing that we're not even through the timeline yet, because so much murder has happened up to this point.
It's pretty awful. Pretty awful. I mean, this is one of the worst crimes in history. And it is interesting because we talked about this before. You think about serial killers, you always think about the United States. The United States is famous for how many serial killers we have had over the decades, but it's hard to find one worse than Pickton.
That's absolutely right. So this slew of murders begins in the late 80s. And we took you through the timeline last week, and we were talking dozens of women are disappearing and ending up murdered. This brings us now to May of 2005. I mean, this is a serial killer who is on the go for multiple decades. Now, police confirm that Pickton will be tried for 27 murders. 26 of them are known victims, and one of them is an unknown victim whose DNA was linked to the farm. The charge for the unknown victim was later dropped. August 9th, 2006, due to differences in the evidence, as well as in an effort to make things easier on the jury, because a 27 murder charge is a lot for the jury to take in, the court actually decides to divide the case into 2 trials. That's still double digits in murders for each trial. Pickton will initially be tried for the murders of the 6 women, and then a separate murder trial will be held for the remaining 20 counts of murder at a later date. And this is what Brett was talking about last time. This is devastating because each of these women is a devastating story. But here we are talking about how to present the information in a digestible format to the jury. And the women really do become a number, but the sheer volume of devastation he has caused is truly shocking.
And one thing we've talked about before is the trauma that is imposed on jurors. And it's something that I think we just don't think about enough. And I forget what case we talked about it in, but it is really difficult to be a juror on a case like this. I mean, think about this. If you are on a trial where 6 different people are murdered, think of the photographs you're going to see. Think of the evidence you're going to hear, particularly in a case like this, which is so incredibly gruesome as you're going to hear. I mean, you're an ordinary person coming off the street, and all of a sudden, like, you have to face this stuff. And I could imagine that was part of it, that just 6 is bad enough, but man, 26, going through each one of those people, how they died, the evidence of their death, their remains, just horrific. So an underappreciated thing that I think we should remember is just jury duty is truly a public service, because some of the things you have to see if you serve in a case like this, you will never forget.
So even though the charging goes back to 2005, it's not until January 22nd, 2007 that Pickton's murder trial begins. He's being tried for the murders of Serena Abbotsway, Mona Wilson, Andrea, sometimes listed as Angela, Josbury, Brenda Wolfe, Georgina Papin, and Marnie Frey. Now, the Crown delivered opening statements and detailed the graphic nature of these crimes. They played Pickton's jailhouse confession, where he states that he killed 49 women and was disappointed he didn't make it to an even 50. The next few months are filled with testimony. Guys, months of testimony. Filled with testimony from various witnesses, investigators, and experts. And the human remains and other evidence found on the farm are discussed in length. The autopsy photos of the women's partial remains were shown, after which a recess was called when several jurors became visibly shaken because, like we said, this is one of the most horrific serial murders in history. Pickton's former friend, Lynn Ellingson, delivers her damning testimony that she claims she saw a woman's body hanging from a chain in Pickton's barn. Whew.
Yeah, and, her testimony is shocking, but it's also believable because of how the remains are found. I mean, it seems like Pickton, he murdered these people, and then essentially he butchered their body to eliminate those remains. We talked about this some last time. The rendering plant, the fact that apparently some of this may have even made it into the food stream. He would dump some of it into the water. He would feed some of it to animals. I mean, this was a sophisticated operation in some ways. Granted, there were many failures on the part of the police in this case, but I don't know that you necessarily get away with 49 murders if you're not also doing something pretty sophisticated. The fact that none of the bodies were found. Remember, that was one of the reasons the police never took this seriously. It's not like they were finding all these bodies and this was like a Green River situation or a Ted Bundy situation where you're finding bodies and you're like, oh, we got something going on here. That wasn't happening because he was eliminating the remains, though not entirely, as we're going to see later. So on August 13th, 2007, after 7 months of this kind of testimony, I mean, just psychological torture for everyone involved, the prosecution rests, and they had called a total of 98 witnesses. And I'll just say this. Canada doesn't have the death penalty, but this is another circumstance where, man, wouldn't it be nice to use that as a bargaining chip? Because if you did, this could have been avoided. He could have pled guilty. We don't have the trial. We don't have all this trauma. We don't have all this going on. But honestly, he doesn't have much to lose, as you're going to see later. So on September 4th, his lawyers begin their defense, and they put together a pretty thoroughgoing defense. They begin by attacking the credibility of Ellingson. She is one of the few eyewitnesses in this case, and there's a lot of circumstantial evidence in this case that is pretty damning, but she is the direct witness who says she saw this terrible thing. And they also point out, look, yeah, it is really bad that all of this was found on the farm, but there were so many people who came to the property, and they had virtually unlimited access to the property because of all these parties, because this was essentially a rave every night. And they're trying to say, hey, this could have been someone else who committed these atrocities. They also put on experts to attempt to refute various pieces of evidence introduced by the Crown, including some bloodstain evidence that tied Pickton to the crime. They also noted a few things that are kind of interesting. So obviously, there was a lot of evidence, but a lot of it did not have Pickton's fingerprints on it, DNA on it, or anything. But even though they didn't have Robert Pickton's, they did have David, his brother's. His brother's fingerprints were found in various areas where evidence was discovered. So there was also this sort of indication of, hey, maybe you got the wrong brother. Now, there's some problems here. Robert's own words are definitely something that come back to haunt him. He bragged about this. He bragged about the number of people he killed. A lot of damning evidence. But once again, they're just trying to raise some doubt about what's going on here. So they present a good month-long case. They actually take about 7 weeks to present their case. And they called 30 witnesses, and that is a ton of witnesses. You know, I would say probably 50% of the time, defense attorneys don't call any witnesses. They basically say, look, we don't have to call anybody because it was the prosecution's job to prove the case. They didn't prove it. We don't have to do anything. And that's sort of their approach. And usually when it's a particularly damning case, they'll take that approach. Or if it's a very weak case. I mean, if it's a weak case, that can be a pretty powerful rhetorical point. But even if you do call witnesses, you don't normally call 30, but they called 30. I think part of that is because the prosecution called so many, and that's sort of the other side of the coin. You want to try and match the intensity of the case. Like, oh, the prosecution's called a bunch of witnesses. Well, we got a bunch of witnesses too. And if they got 98 and we got 30, there's got to be doubt somewhere because that's a lot of people to have to bring in to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt. So in November, the closing arguments begin. The defense, they go first, which is interesting. You know, it's just different in all sorts of places. It's like this in Massachusetts. The defense goes first. And they're sort of attacking the credibility of the Crown's witnesses. They're pointing out where the evidence is lacking. They're like doing a pretty good job, right, of trying to put this all together. He had good attorneys. He had good representation. I don't think anybody would say that Robert Pickton had ineffective counsel. And they were able to link some of his friends to some of the victims and say, look, some of his friends knew them. Maybe they did it. And they just wanted to use the property as a dumping ground. The number really hurts, though. Like if it were one person, that'd be one thing. Say, oh, there's so many people on the property. But, I mean, unless this is like the Lincoln Park of Canada, like that's a lot of dead people to be found in one place for it to be unrelated to the owners. But the prosecution, they're driving home the point of the confession. The defense tried to say, look, he's just parroting the police officer. You can listen to it for yourself. And they say, look, yeah, some of our witnesses are unsavory. They got problems. But guess what? That's exactly what you normally see in a trial. It doesn't mean they're unreliable. And they say, look, Robert Pickton, he is not some dim-witted guy. He is smarter than he lets on, and he's exactly the kind of person who could have planned and executed this kind of crime.
And this is amazing. Most of the closing arguments we've seen, we've watched a few with you guys and talked about them in real time. They usually happen in a day. Not so here. The case did go on for many months, but with the closing arguments starting on November 19th, they went for basically a week. The closing arguments ended on November 26th, 2007. And then a few days later, November 30th, the jury begins deliberations. They deliberate for over a week. They go home, they come back, they go home and come back. We've always said that if you have a fast verdict, that tends to be good for the prosecution. This was a very lengthy trial. There are 6 different women who are victims that you have to consider all the individual evidence for. So I'm not surprised it took them a long time. But when jury deliberations ended on December 9th, the jury foreman stood up and announced that Pickton was not guilty of first-degree murder. As you can imagine, the courtroom erupted in disbelief. There were people who screamed, relatives who couldn't believe what they were hearing. It was a very tense situation because when they heard that, everyone was afraid this mass murderer was about to walk free and go commit his 50th murder like he wanted to do and said he was going to do on these jailhouse calls. However, the jury did find Pickton guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder.
And look, I don't know the laws of Canada. Maybe some Canadian barrister can write in. But I gotta tell you, we're always laying it out for juries. We're defending juries, talking about how juries are great. You can trust juries. And then you see verdicts like this and you're like, so what exactly do you think happened? You think he
all
killed
6 women tripped?
Yeah. It just... Exactly. They fell into the meat processor or something, but he created a really dangerous situation, or he, was slinging his chainsaw around in random directions and just happened to kill somebody, but it was really reckless disregard for human life. So second-degree murder. I mean, what is the
They fell
theory?
into the rendering plant,
Yeah. Or he invited all 6 over and he didn't intend to kill them, but things just went wrong and so he did. That didn't happen. 6 times?
So clearly, this is what's confusing about this verdict. They clearly think he's responsible for the murders. It's not like there was reasonable doubt of whether it was him or his friends or his brother. They're holding him responsible for the murders. So it's the manner in which they died, which the way they're left leaves no doubt that he intended to kill them and tried to dispose of them.
And look, this is a significant distinction because they don't have the death penalty, but first-degree murder would have been life without parole. But now it's not. Now there's a situation in which he could get out.
So on December 11th, the British Columbia Supreme Court Judge James Williams sentences Pickton to life in prison, serving 6 life prison sentences concurrently, with no eligibility for parole for the maximum of 25 years. For what he did, remember, this is but 6 of the potentially 49 murders that he committed, at least 27 that are linked to him. And that's not the end. Come the next month, January 9th, Pickton's defense team, he has a very good defense team. They begin their appeal process for a new trial because they claim that Justice James Williams made a mistake when he delivered instructions to the jury.
Yeah, and a few things to note here. So he's been in prison since 2002. He's serving all that time. Essentially, he got 25 years for this. Essentially, that's what he got. Because with the way it works, he won't necessarily get out on parole, but he's up for parole in 25 years. And because they're served concurrently, it's day for day, right? So he's serving 1 day for all 6 murders. And then he could potentially get out. So this is it's a rough situation. And you can imagine if you're the family, you're pretty concerned and you're having this new appeal. And it seems like it came pretty close to succeeding. But his conviction was upheld in a 2-1 ruling. So 2 of the 3 judges ruled that the judge did err in his final instructions to the jury, but decided those were essentially harmless. They were not significant enough to result in a new trial. The other judge disagreed and said, no, this was an error and it should result in a new trial. This is not a great ruling for the prosecution because you have 3 judges who agree. Yeah, he screwed up. That's a very powerful position now for the defense going into their next appeal, which they're going to have, because they're going to say, look, they all agreed he screwed up. They just disagreed on whether or not this was significant enough for a new trial. That's a pretty big step that they've already gotten to. And so, of course, they announce they are going to be appealing to the Supreme Court of Canada, asking for a new trial. Now, while all this is going on, there are some consequences for what happened in this case. As we talked about last time, this case was screwed up from the beginning. There were indications that women were going missing for years. There were indications that Pickton was involved, and the police either had no interest of investigating or felt like they couldn't. And it just felt like you then find out this person killed 49 people right under your nose. There's going to be some investigation. So the provincial government establishes an inquiry and begins to look into this and how it was handled by authorities. In December of 2012, the Missing Women Commission of Inquiry issues its final report, titled Forsaken, which is not a great title if you're one of the police officers who's going to be talked about in this inquiry. And they note blatant failures by the police, including inept criminal investigative work, compounded by police and societal prejudice against sex workers and Indigenous people, and that this had led to a tragedy of epic proportions. And I think never were truer words spoken than that. So the inquiry actually includes 63 recommendations, including the creation of a Greater Vancouver Regional Police Force to allow for more effective, less fragmented police cooperation. It also called for more funding for emergency shelters for women and for compensation for the children of the women who went missing and were murdered. And following this report, the Vancouver Police Department did implement several policy and procedural changes, and the Missing Persons Unit was made a regular part of the police department. Investigations were now required to begin without delay. No more of this, come back in a few days and tell us if they came back. Family members are required to be kept advised regularly and consulted before the release of information, and the case file is kept open until a missing person is located. So, as we often say, these cases are terrible tragedies, but the one thing is sometimes when you have a tragedy of this proportion, you do get some positive change. So my hope is that out of this, there are people whose lives have been saved, whose cases have been solved, criminals who've been taken off the street because of reforms that came from the Pickton case.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations. Automate your alternative resolution program with Diversion Manager. Diversion Manager is a proven web-based software platform that automates and manages diversion programs. The platform benefits prosecutors' offices and communities by quickly disposing of system clogging, low-level crimes, holding participants accountable, while providing them with a second chance. Diversion Manager is used by over 600 agencies across the U.S. and provides over 30 online behavior-changing courses addressing a wide variety of traffic and misdemeanor violations, and has been shown to lower recidivism rates. Diversion Manager's advanced workflow automates screening, communication, and disposition, eliminating manual steps. It manages processes including registration, fee handling, and document upload verification, increasing productivity. Your office can dispose of hundreds of cases in a matter of minutes rather than days. If you need the support of our fully functional platform, which can be configured to accommodate the automation and management of alternative programs with advanced workflow, communication, reporting, and integration with your case management system, then you need Diversion Manager. Go to diversionmanager.com/podcast to learn more and to schedule a demonstration of our fully functional platform. So even though the Court of Appeals, remember, had the 2-1 ruling, still not granting a new trial, but still kind of breaking sort of close, the defense appeals up to the Supreme Court of Canada, but thankfully they unanimously rejected Pickton's appeal for a new trial on July 30th, 2010. Guys, these murders started in the 80s, and the appeals are going into 2010. August 4th, 2010, this is kind of a massive blow, but the prosecutors announced that they're not going to be proceeding with the additional 20 counts of murder. 20 women, DNA linked to them, they're just not going to proceed. This is obviously a massive blow to the families of these 20 women, but the prosecution said that even if he got more convictions, it would not equate to any additional time behind bars for Pickton. And so since he's already serving the maximum allowable time, they're not using the resources to pursue this. This is kind of what we were talking about, where there isn't necessarily justice for those other 20 women. So even if the conviction didn't add to more time, you have this court ruling, the trial, where your family member, your daughter, your mother, your sister mattered, and there's someone held accountable by the law for their murder, but not the case here. I understand, with respect to like resources, but this is truly devastating, not just for those 20 women, for the other, up to 49 women who won't really ever get justice in the eyes of the law.
And it seems like there's a significant number of his victims who we don't even know who they are. So there's a coda to this case, and we'll get to that in a second. But before we do that, we do want to talk about the victims in this case, who they were, and some of the evidence that was used against Pickton to convict him for their crimes. Because as we said, there are people out there who still sort of doubt whether or not it was him, maybe it was his brother, maybe he was railroaded, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's good to at least go through and talk about some of this, because it's just simply not true that there's no significant evidence against Robert Pickton. Let's talk with Brenda Wolfe. So Brenda was born October 20th, 1968. She was from Lethbridge, Alberta. Now, little is known about how she ended up in Vancouver's East Side. We know that Brenda, she had struggled with drug addiction, but at the time of her disappearance, it seemed like she had actually turned her life around, and she was working as a waitress and even as a bouncer, so somebody who could kind of take care of herself. It's not believed that Brenda was a sex worker, and she was last seen on March 5th, 1999. But however she came into contact with Robert Pickton, we know that he is the person who murdered her. So first of all, what remained of her body was found at the piggery on the property. In fact, her jawbone was found in a debris pile. Her DNA was found on a leather jacket in Pickton's bedroom, and her DNA was found on the key to a pair of handcuffs located in the workshop on the farm.
So that was Brenda Wolfe. Serena Abbotsway was born on August 20th, 1971, and she was born into a difficult situation. She had fetal alcohol syndrome, and both of her parents died when she was very young. At the age of 4, she was taken in by loving foster parents, who she stayed with until she was 17 years old. But unfortunately for Serena, she had a violent streak which resulted in her being placed in a group home where she was introduced to drugs. Now, she was working as a sex worker at the time of her disappearance and was known as an activist in her community, often speaking at rallies when sex workers began disappearing at an alarming rate in Vancouver throughout the 80s and 90s. And that's incredibly devastating. She was speaking out against the exact situation that she became a victim to. She was last seen in July of 2001, and she was 29 years old. Now, the evidence linking Pickton to Serena, her hands head, and feet were all found in a bucket in one of the workshop's freezers on the Pickton farm. Her DNA was also found in a bucket with another victim's remains. Her blood was found on a ski bag in Pickton's office, as well as her DNA on 2 syringes in the bag. Finally, her inhaler, if you remember, that was a key piece of evidence that was uncovered in that search, was found on the property, as well as documents addressed to her. I mean, this is horrific. She was clearly taken apart. The syringes, who knows what he injected her with, but we have some ideas. It was a very horrific torture that she went through before she met her end.
So then there's Mona Wilson, and these are the women that he was convicted of murdering. So then there's Mona Wilson. Mona was a First Nations woman. She was born on a reservation in Alberta, and she lived in a treatment center as a young child, but was removed from the center when she was found badly beaten. So once again, the tragedy of these women's lives began very early on. At the age of 8, she moved in with a foster family. And this was the first time that things went well for her. They loved her dearly, and she stayed with the family until she was 14. But unfortunately, the thing about foster, it's temporary. And she was moved to a new foster home. And unlike the first one, the second one, she did not have a positive experience. And by the age of 16, she was living on her own in Vancouver, and she was struggling with a growing heroin addiction. She was working as a sex worker at the time of her disappearance in December 2001, and she was 26 years old when she vanished. Much like Serena, her head, hands, and feet were found in a bucket at the farm, and her DNA was also found on a sex toy in the laundry room and in bloodstains on a mattress and the walls of a motorhome on the property. So just, once again, as gruesome a crime as you could imagine.
Then there's Marnie Frey. Marnie was born to a loving and supportive family, but her life took a turn when she unexpectedly fell pregnant at age 18. After she gave birth to her daughter, she was introduced to the world of drugs and began working as a sex worker in Vancouver to support her habit. Now, despite these struggles, she stayed in frequent contact with her family. She called home at least daily to check on her daughter, and Marnie was last seen in August of 1997. But she made her last call in September of 1999. Now, her jawbone was found outside of the slaughterhouse on the Pickton farm.
And you can see how difficult a situation like that makes it for the police. So she's very transient. She doesn't have a very solid connections. I mean, she has her daughter, but she's last seen by anyone who knows her in 1997, but still making phone calls in 1999. Hard to say exactly when she disappeared, and that makes that crime very difficult to solve. Not that the police really put that much effort into it. So then there's Georgina Papin. Georgina was born March 11th, 1964. She was one of 9 children, and she and her siblings were placed into foster care at a very young age. And she lived in dozens of foster homes, and she never had an established home or family. Now, she was also a First Nations woman, and she was the mother to 7 children herself. But she had also struggled with an addiction to drugs, and she had been in and out of prison and had actually lost custody of her children by the time of her disappearance. And she disappeared in March of 1999. She actually called her daughter and told her that she didn't feel well and that she would be checking into a local care facility. She was 34 at the time, and no one ever heard from her again. Her hand bones were found buried under a platform in the slaughterhouse on the Pickton farm.
The fact that this is all we're finding of them, I mean, is just really, really devastating, and also shows how sophisticated Pickton was. And then there's Andrea Joesbury. Andrea did not have the best home life from the very beginning. She grew up among alcoholism, physical and mental abuse. And at 16 years old, Andrea's boyfriend convinced her to move with him to Vancouver. Her boyfriend was a drug dealer who got her addicted to the drugs he sold. And she ended up working as a sex worker to support that habit. Now, she had a daughter and several siblings who loved her and remember her as a loving person with a huge smile. She was last seen in June of 2001, and she was only 21 years old. Andrea's head, hands, and feet were found in a bucket in one of the freezers in the workshop. In addition, her DNA was found on a ring and earring in the slaughterhouse and on a jacket and boots in Pickton's bedroom. Her DNA was also found on the bathroom wall and a pillowcase in the laundry room.
And this goes, we talked about this last time, just how thorough the police were. Once they started this investigation, once they got on that farm, they did a very good job. And the amount of DNA they processed was incredible. And that's why they're able to find all this DNA in all these different places, because basically they swabbed that whole place and discovered, unfortunately, a lot of DNA of a lot of women who've disappeared. Now, those are the women he was convicted of killing. We're going to go through 20 additional murder charges that he had. As we said, those were stayed and he was never prosecuted for them. And we're just going to very briefly tell you who these people were, when they were last seen, and what evidence was found relevant to them. So one is Diana Melnick. She was last seen on December 22nd, 1995, and her DNA was found on the walls of a workshop freezer and on plastic sheet liners inside. Tanya Hollick, she was last seen October 29th, 1996, and her DNA was also found on the walls of the workshop freezer. And this is, I think you can see why they picked some of the ones they did, right? I mean, they're finding actual body parts for most of these women. Here, you're just seeing like the last trace of them, DNA on a wall. And that's all you're seeing. So you know they were there, and you know what happened to them, but the proof there is a little bit more thin. Kara Ellis was last seen January 1997. Her DNA was on Pickton's jacket. A prayer card also had her DNA on it. There were some medical appointment slips and a wristwatch bearing Pickton's DNA. All these were found on a slaughterhouse shelf. So you sort of have all these different objects, some of which belong to her. Then you have some of his DNA and some of her DNA very close to each other. And her DNA was also found on those plastic sheet liners in that workshop freezer. And it makes you wonder if either he was placing body parts in this freezer until he could ship them somewhere else, or if in fact maybe he was even dismembering people on this plastic in this area. Then there's Andrea Borhaven. She disappeared March 10th, 1997. Her DNA was found on Pickton's boot. DNA was found on one earring in a plastic grocery bag filled with other jewelry. So just imagine that. It's a plastic grocery bag they find on this property filled with women's jewelry. And it wasn't because he was robbing jewelry stores.
And note that hers is one earring. Think about a grocery bag and how much jewelry can fit in there. How many women it came from.
And this bag was found hidden in a floor vent in Pickton's kitchen. So he knew exactly what he was doing. He was collecting this, and then he would hide it. Sherry Irving, she was last seen on March 18th, 1997. Her DNA was also found on the walls of that workshop freezer. Helen May Hallmark was last seen on June 15th, 1997. And DNA from her and Pickton were found in a blood spatter on the bedroom closet door. And there was also DNA on a cowboy hat of hers in Pickton's bedroom closet. So we got a lot of transfer going on here as well. Cynthia Felix was last seen December 26, 1997. And her DNA was found in 9 packages of ground pork in the workshop freezer. And her DNA was found on those plastic sheet liners in the freezer as well.
Whew, the list continues. Carrie Koski was last seen on January 2nd, 1998, and her DNA was on a pair of earrings in that plastic grocery bag that was filled with other jewelry that was hidden in that floor vent in Pickton's kitchen. Inga Hall was last seen on February 26th, 1998. Her DNA was found also in 9 packages of ground pork in the workshop freezer. Now, DNA was on the plastic sheet liners and in the walls of the workshop freezer. The police also found clumps of her hair in a plastic bag on a shelf in the slaughterhouse. The things that he ends up keeping is, and part of it is there's so many bodies to hide. It may not be that he has an obsession with the clumps of hair. It's just there's so much. And if you can probably tell, multiple women's DNA are going to be found in this ground pork. In other words, he had lots of women at one time. You can see this timeline. We don't even have all 49 women as he claims that he killed. He is murdering these women at a massive clip where he can't dispose of them fast enough. And so he's disposing of them in groups at a time, which is why we're seeing their DNA in multiple places at the same time. Not because they were killed together, but because he killed at such a fast clip. Sarah DeVries was last seen on April 13th, 1998. Now, she had a white purse in the loft of the mechanical shop that contained lipsticks with her DNA on it, and there was a used condom with Pickton's DNA. Now, the bank card of a man she ripped off just before her disappearance was also in the loft. Angela Hardeen was last seen on November 20th, 1998. Her DNA was found on the walls of the workshop freezer.
So then there's Jacqueline McDonnell, last seen January 21st, 1999. Her blood and Pickton's DNA were found on handcuffs in the headboard of Pickton's bed. The DNA was also found on an earring in a cardboard box in Pickton's bedroom closet. So, once again, you get the bag of jewelry underneath the kitchen floor. Then he's got a cardboard box where he's also keeping some jewelry in his closet. Tiffany Drew, August 20th, 1999. Her DNA was found on a syringe which was filled with windshield wiper fluid. And this was found in an entertainment center in Pickton's office. And remember, Pickton talked about one of the ways he would kill people was by injecting them with antifreeze, and I guess in this case, windshield wiper fluid. I mean, just horrendous crimes. Wendy Crawford was last seen November 24th, 1999. Of her, they found a partial leg bone which had been whittled down. So, whittling, like you whittle wood, I guess you can whittle bones as well. Well, they found this, and it's a little unclear what it means that it had been whittled, whether he did that on purpose, if that was part of the removal process, or if he was doing that in some sort of weird hobby. I don't know. And this was found in a sewage cistern outside the slaughterhouse. Then there was Jennifer Lynn Ferminger. She was last seen December 27th, 1999. Her blood was on a brown leather jacket in Pickton's office. It was also on a hooded pullover in the laundry room and a watch on the shelf in the slaughterhouse. There was also blood on 3 spots, including the handguard and cord of an electric reciprocating saw in the slaughterhouse. So, once again, he is dismembering these women, and they're finding, in this case, some DNA on one of the saws that he used. And there was also DNA on a black t-shirt and a debris pile in the former piggery. Then there was Deborah Lynn Jones, December 21st, 2000. Her blood was found in a black Eddie Bauer purse and a broken crack pipe that was found at the foot of Pickton's bed. I mean, I guess he'd been getting away with it for so long. It's not like he made any effort whatsoever to clean a lot
He
of
did not clean. I was going to say, those cleaners did not come through his house.
No, they did not. And I guess, it was a developing time with DNA and everything. He probably figured, I'm getting rid of the bodies, I'm good. But obviously, with DNA technology, they're able to find a lot of stuff and attach it to him. Plus, as we've said before, blood, I mean, it really does get everywhere. It's hard, even if you were trying to clean it up. The keys attached to the purse were smeared with her blood and opened a Surrey hotel room that had been rented by her at the time of her disappearance.
So the list continues. Patricia Rose Johnson was last seen on February 27th, 2001. Her blood was on some plywood in the slaughterhouse, and there was also her DNA on a sex toy in Pickton's bedroom. Now, there was DNA from her on a syringe outside of the trailer. By the way, you can see his methods through all of this DNA that we're finding, right? I know that he wasn't tried for all these things, but like if the defense is my friend just dumped, used my place as a dumping ground, you're seeing these repeated things. They're all in his bedroom. He uses the saw. He uses the same liner, the same workshop freezer. He keeps their earrings and their jewelry hidden in the same bag. He uses, the same sex toys on them. He uses the same syringes on them. I mean, you begin to see these patterns, and I think it's worth noting all of this for the people who are like, there's not evidence that he did this. They're just pinning it on some weird guy who lives on a pig farm. These are all patterns that the police are looking for. These are not 20 random murders, 27 random murders. You see a very clear pattern all tied to his actions as well and his zone. We're not talking about across acres and acres. There are concentrated places where we're seeing all this evidence. Then there's Heather Bottomley. She was last seen on March 21st, 2001. Her DNA is inside the bucket with Joesbury's remains in that workshop freezer. And her DNA is on a broken black necklace in the slaughterhouse. 4 blood stains on the fabric in the mattress of Pickton's bed were also linked to her. Now, Pickton's DNA was also on the same cloth, and her identification and notebook were on a table next to the TV in Pickton's bedroom. All right, guys, it is starting to be holiday season, which means I get to break out some of my favorite outfits. But truthfully, after having 4 kids, sometimes I just feel a little bit more confident when I use Honeylove. Honeylove has the absolute best shapewear and comfortable bras that give me comfort and confidence when I'm dressing up for my holiday parties to just going about my regular day. It's so comfortable I can wear it every day. You don't have to spend the season tugging at uncomfortable bras or shapewear that rolls down. Honeylove moves with you so you can enjoy the moment. The new Cloud Embrace bra is the perfect treat yourself gift. I reach for it every time when I go to my closet. It is that comfortable. It's a modern wireless t-shirt bra with sturdy, lightly padded foam cups that feel like a cloud against your skin. It's a wireless bra for people who love underwire. It's sold out in days, so don't wait. I'm so glad I got my hands on one. You're going to want one too. This is a present to put under the tree or in your own stocking. Gift Honeylove to yourself or someone you love because nothing says holiday spirit like support, comfort, and confidence. They also have undie bundles, which make the perfect stocking stuffer. Treat yourself or someone you love to Honeylove this holiday season. And right now, you can save 20% at honeylove.com/prosecutors. Just use our exclusive link, honeylove.com/prosecutors, to grab your discount. After you order, they'll ask you where you heard about Honeylove. So please support our show and let them know we sent you. Celebrate the season feeling confident and comfortable with Honeylove. I just imagine these women coming in, whether they're there for like the rave that night, they have their purse with them, they put them down, they think it's going to be a regular night, and they're met with a horrific end. That's kind of what you see, right? Their purses are with them. They still have their hotel keys. They have people they ripped off, credit cards and whatnot. And they're all around his room because they probably had sex in there. That's why their DNA is on the mattress. That's why their stuff is right by his TV and his bedside table. Again, this is linking it to him, not his brother, not his friends, unless he let everyone use his bedroom, which is then difficult to explain why his DNA is mixed in with all of these women as well. Then there's Heather Chinnock. So just like many women before, including Heather Bottomley, who we just talked about, Heather Chinnock's DNA was found inside the bucket, also with Joesbury's remains in the workshop freezer. She had a distinctive wolf head ring, and that was also found in the pig pen. We don't know for sure if it's hers, but it was very distinctive looking, and we knew that she wore this ring. Now, her DNA was found on some overalls in Pickton's bedroom closet, and her DNA was also on a silver bracelet and ring, and on a suede jacket in a box under a door, all in the workshop loft. And then there was Diane Rock, who was last seen on October 19th, 2001. Her DNA was on the walls of the workshop freezer. Her purse was found in a debris pile in the old piggery, and it contained a knotted, fluid-filled condom with Pickton's DNA. There was her DNA on a cigarette butt and a bench seat and a step in the motorhome, as well as her hairs on a Hudson Bay blanket. I don't think he ever did laundry, by the way.
Apparently not.
So in total, the police found DNA of 33 missing women on the Pickton farm, which means there may be more. There likely are more than that. And the fact that they were able to find all this DNA when there really are just traces, transfer, mixed in with each other, and able to link it to these women, even though some of them had disappeared many, many years ago, if not a decade earlier, is actually incredible police work.
So one thing I think we can say for certain is that Robert Willie Pickton was involved in these murders and committed several of them. But one of the questions that people have often had is, was David involved? Remember, his sister moved away, but David stayed. And David and Robert worked on the farm. They sold off the land together. They ran Piggy Palace together. David's fingerprints are found in a lot of the areas. I think they're found on the bucket, for instance. David, his position, obviously, has always been that he knew nothing about this. He wasn't involved at all. To the extent his fingerprints are found anywhere, it's because he probably had handled the bucket before it had body parts in it. I will just say this. It is hard to imagine that someone could murder 49 people, dismember them in this way, get rid of the bodies, and you're just oblivious to that. I mean, I know it was a big property, but it wasn't that big. So it makes sense to me that people have raised questions about this. And there is an interesting thing that happened in David's history that I think sort of sheds light on this entire family. So go all the way back to October 16th, 1967. So David was out for a joyride in the family's truck. He was 16 and he had just recently got his license. Well, while he's driving around on the truck, Timothy Barrett, who's a local 8th grader, he's walking home. David doesn't see him, and he hits him with the truck. David gets out of the truck to see what he hit, because he didn't even see what it was. As soon as he realizes that it was a person, he doesn't help, he flees the scene, and he goes straight to his parents. And he tells his mom what he's done. And she says, we're going to go to the police. We're going to call an ambulance. We're going to get help for this kid. We're going to do the right thing. No, she doesn't say any of that. She says, remove all the evidence of the accident from the truck. You clean up the truck. Take care of that. She, meanwhile, goes back to the scene where Timothy is still laying on the side of the road. And what she does is she takes Timothy and she rolls him off the road into a swampy area and into the water. So by the time she gets back, the truck, it's damaged beyond what they can fix on their own. So they go to a nearby mechanic at around 8:30 p.m. that night, insisting the truck be fixed immediately. The mechanic refuses.
Really takes it to a whole new level of who's going to help you hide a body. But this is the mom doing it for a 16-year-old boy. So the next day, after Timothy doesn't return home, Timothy's dad goes out looking for his son, and he finds Timothy's body in the swamp. So when the mechanic heard about this incident, he contacts the police, who obtained a search warrant for the Pickton family farm. The paint on the truck matched the paint on Timothy's body, and the autopsy revealed that Timothy had not actually died in that car accident. He had drowned in 2 feet of swamp water and likely could have been saved if they had called the ambulance and brought him to the hospital. Now, Dave was charged with failing to remain at an accident in juvenile court, but no murder charge was brought against him or his mother. Why? I don't know. I mean,
I don't know.
Kind of like the Karen Reed case. Like, John could have been saved if something had been done. He would not have died if he were just on the side of the road, is what the autopsy's showing.
And I know he's a juvenile. It's 1967. I would like to think that if this happened today, there would have been much more serious consequences. But apparently it was common knowledge what his mother had done. Like, everybody knew that. But I don't know if they just couldn't prove it, if it was more hearsay. You know, Maybe he rolled into the water on his own or something. But whatever the case, they never charge her. And you can sort of see, I mean, the combination of all the abuse growing up and then this kind of example.
Talk about like your moral compass being shaped by these types of people. There's no, I mean, what do you do when there's an accident, much less when you're the aggressor? Hide it and you'll get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a very strong message that other lives don't matter. You know, you're free to do what you want to with them. Oh, you hit somebody with a truck? Well, we need to cover that up, right? Because their life doesn't matter. All that matters is you and protecting you. And I think that, obviously, I don't think you could do the things that Robert Pickton did unless you were also very sick. But it certainly didn't help that this was the example. And honestly, it's the perfect storm. I think you had someone who was predisposed to this kind of stuff. But then all of the horrific things he went through as a child, and then seeing this example, it's just not surprising that he ended up doing what he did. So a coda on this case. In February of 2024, Robert Pickton became eligible for parole, and he was optimistic. He would tell people that he thought maybe he would get parole. But on May 19th, 2024, only a couple months later, he was attacked by a 51-year-old fellow inmate at the Port Cartier Institution in Quebec, Canada. That was Martin Charest, and he did not deny what he did. He told authorities that he had repeatedly heard Pickton brag about his crimes and say that if he was released, he wanted to commit some more murders. And he's got to get to 50, right? So that was his intention. If he ever got out of prison, he was going to murder someone else. On May 18th, Charest heard Pickton saying to another inmate that his great regret from his time at the piggy farm was that he had not eaten one of the children of his victims. So this is on May 18th. On May 19th, Charest follows Pickton into a room where he manages to jam the lock behind him. He then starts to beat him, intent on killing him. So at this point, the police know that this is going on. The jail guards are trying to get into the room. It's locked. They can't quite get in. And so what they do is they actually are able to release gas into the room to subdue Charest. And Charest, he realizes his time is short and he's just not able to finish Pickton off. So what he does is he grabs a broom handle and he either takes the broom handle and stabs it into Pickton's brain and then breaks it off, or he breaks it and then stabs it into Pickton's brain. It's a little unclear. You get different reports from different people. And he left the broken broom handle in his head. And Charest would tell police, didn't do it for himself. He did it for the victims. That was on May 19th. On May 31st, 12 days after the attack, Robert Willie Pickton died. He was 74 years old. And of course, we would never condone prison violence or justice. Apropos of nothing, I did recently learn that you can't put money into a prisoner's commissary in Canada unless you're a family member or friend. So, just noting that. But that's the end of the Robert Pickton case.
I will say, for the amount of horror that he committed, whether he said that on May 18th or not, when you see his entire life, the reason we went back to his 3-year-old childhood, when he was forced outside to sleep outside in a chicken coop and scoop water from the spring underneath the chicken coop for water. The reason we went all the way back is the horrificness of his entire life and his actions. This is not something he outgrows. I fully believe that at 74, there would be additional victims because there had been such deep contortion of anything within his mind and his heart that this is not the type of immense disregard for life that you age out of.
Oh, no.
So he continues to be, I don't know, what would have happened with that parole hearing, but I fully believe that his record shows that he would have continued to kill.
Yeah, I think 100%. And Charest presumably will get a significant prison sentence because of this. He just pleaded guilty. I mean, this is a very recent thing, but yeah, I know he was never going to change. And if he had had the opportunity to kill again, he would have done it. Now, I don't think he ever would have been paroled. I don't know why he thought he was going to be paroled. He was probably just talking. I mean, he liked to talk, as we know from the guard thing, right? When he was talking to the informant who was actually a prison guard, and he was bragging about everything he did. I mean, he liked to talk about it. So I don't have any doubt that he was saying this stuff and that Martin Cheris overheard him and decided to take matters into his own hands. But I don't think he would ever gotten out. But certainly, good riddance to Willie Pickton. You know, whatever happened to him when he was a child, and it was horrific, what he became, I mean, it turned him into a monster. And he was a monster of just the highest order. And we often say in a lot of these cases, they're not monsters. I mean, it's normal people commit horrific crimes all the time, and it's sometimes hard to imagine, and you don't really understand why, and you see their life before, and there's no real sign of it, and it's shocking and terrible. This is not one of those cases. I mean, this is someone who, through some combination probably of who they were and what they were turned into, became just a horrific person.
And a note on inevitability, or if his childhood in any way excuses what he did. And we don't fully know his brother's role in all of this. It's not in the court of law. We're never going to know. He may have not had nothing to do with any of this. But I will know he had a horrific childhood, but he was one of 3 children. And his brother's DNA is not found on 33 dead women's belongings. And his sister also did not go on to murder 50 people either. So you can have very, very difficult and horrendous childhoods. It does not excuse what this is. It helps explain how humanity can take such a dark turn, but I do not believe that it is inevitable.
No. It certainly doesn't excuse it. And like you said, I mean, his sister seems to be a perfectly normal person. Opinions can vary on David. Obviously, when he was 16, he did a terrible thing, but he was also 16. And, I mean, I'll say this. There is evidence of David doing good things. You know, he started that charity I think in Africa for a certain disease. I mean, maybe he's a better person. Or maybe he was involved in all this. I don't know. And I don't know that we'll ever know exactly what happened on that farm. But Alice is right. Like, this reminds me, it's kind of like Bone Valley. And we talk about this a lot, the Jeremy Scott case. I mean, Jeremy Scott had a terrible childhood. He was abused. You know, I think his mom ran over him. I can't remember exactly. He got ran over at some point, had a serious head injury, had all sorts of issues. That's all something that's good to know, and it helps inform what happened. But it's not an excuse for what he did. And it does not excuse the terrible things he did. So, like I said, hopefully if there are good things that come out of this case, all of that reform that we saw in the police department has hopefully saved lives. And I think that's the one thing you can say about it. This is such a horrific case in so many ways, and it really highlights that issue that we've talked about before. So many victims, and like, you can't do justice to these folks. I mean, we spent half this episode talking about the victims and barely touched on them. So many lives just destroyed and shattered, and all the people connected to them, the people that loved them, their children, their siblings. And I think it's good to never forget that when you think about these cases. It's just horrendous. So, that was an uplifting case. Yeah.
Welcome back, you October naysayers.
Exactly. People who hate October. I hope you enjoyed that one. Gonna have to do like a
detox
I don't
from
even know.
Murder.
I don't know what we could do after this. Need like
Watch a Bluey episode is what we need to do.
Exactly. The next episode's going to be on Bluey. Any Bluey true crime episodes. Let us know so we can watch them. Anyway, okay. Well, let us know what you think about that. I'm sure people will have thoughts. Some of y'all love these serial killer cases. I'm just not a fan.
They make my stomach turn.
Yeah. There's just too much. It's just too much. And it's so inexplicable. You know, I mean, a lot of the cases, even when someone does a horrendous thing, at least it's like, well, they killed that person for money, you know, or they killed that person because they didn't want to get divorced. And that's a terrible thing. But it's also sort of in the common range of human depravity, right? This is just so far beyond. And it's often that way with serial killers. So we don't do a lot of serial killer cases, partially for that reason. But as we said before, if you enjoyed this, if you like serial killer cases, you want to hear more, you can ask for them. I don't know that you're going to get many, but you can give it a shot. Shoot us an email, prosecutorspod@gmail.com, @prosecutorspod for all your social media. Join us on the Gallery, which is our fan-run group on Facebook, where there's a lot of discussion of these cases. If you want to watch us record these early, you can do so for as little as $3 a month. If you want to get these episodes after they're edited, but early and ad-free, same deal. Patreon's basically, you pay $3, you get everything. So do that. And like I said, if you have a case you want us to cover, let us know about it. We love covering the cases that you guys enjoy. Alice, do you want to do a question? Should we do a question?
We need to do a question.
I feel like, I need detox questions. It's just like,
I can't look at a bucket again. I can't
can't eat
open my freezer
anymore.
and not think about this. Ground pork. I love ground pork.
No sausage. No.
Love gummy bears. It's all going to be really bad.
I don't know if I'm cut out for this true crime thing. I mean, I know we've been doing it for a while.
Not this kind of true crime.
Goodness gracious.
Being found in packages of ground pork. Oh my
man.
goodness. Oh.
Let's see. I need a good one. Okay, so Wingnut says, I just finished listening to the Treehouse murder trial where there was a pro se defendant. How do you change your strategies as a prosecutor when faced with a pro se defendant? I will say this, on Legal Briefs, which is our other podcast, we discussed this in greater detail, people representing themselves. If you want a more detailed answer to this question, I would suggest listening to that. But, okay, have you ever tried to play chess with someone who's never played chess before? And you would think, well, that's going to be easy. They don't even know what they're doing, right? But then all of a sudden they start doing all this weird stuff and pawns are in weird places and the queen's over there on the side and you're just like, what's going on? You know, and all of a sudden they're attacking you with their king and you just don't know what to do. And all your normal strategies are just completely thrown out. It's kind of like that. Like, you don't know what they're going to do. They have no idea what they're doing. They're objecting to stuff that's not objectionable.
And then add to that, the person who is monitoring the game is yelling at you for all of their faults.
Oh, yeah. The judge is getting mad because everything's messed up. And I'll tell you what else the judge did. And we've mentioned this, I think, when we talked about this before.
That's a perfect analogy, by the way.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So one thing that happens in trials is every question you ask could theoretically be objected to, right? Now, usually those objections are frivolous, and most lawyers won't object to a frivolous question. So, for instance, you're asking a lay witness a question that, so in your experience as a police officer, do you know what marijuana smells like, right? Well, everybody knows, every lawyer knows that's a perfectly legitimate question. But pro se guy might be like, objection, he's not an expert. He hasn't been qualified as expert, because they'll do that. They'll just pull that stuff out. And then the judge is like, all right, counsel, he says you should have qualified him as an expert. What do you say to that? And you're like, well, shoot, now I got to do the whole argument about why it's okay for this lay witness to give this testimony based on their experience without qualifying them as an expert. That's actually
it's kind of like why it's really difficult to talk to a toddler, because their questions can be completely legitimate, right? Like, this is a real conversation I had with Brittany, 2 years old today. Why is the sky blue? Oh, it's well, and I started explaining it. Well, then why does the oxygen do that? What is oxygen? What do you breathe? Why do you breathe? What happens when you stop breathing? What makes me go, I mean, right? We've all had these conversations. That's what it's like in the courtroom. You're like, I don't even know how to answer and begin to answer these questions as they all conflate and they have nothing to do with the issue at hand.
Alice and I may have told this story too. We did 500 episodes. It all runs together. A prosecutor pro se guy. And there was this one document that he kept trying to get in. And the judge had excluded it because it wasn't relevant. And he would do things like try and introduce a bunch of legitimate documents that he could actually introduce and slide it into the middle so that, maybe
about that.
He'll get it in and the jury will see it later and they'll be like, uh-huh. And so, we're flipping through the documents. They're like, Your Honor, he's got the document in the middle here. And the judge would be like, now, sir, I've ruled on that. You can't introduce that. And it's just completely all the sort of, it's kind of like all the unwritten rules in baseball that you just don't violate. Well, he doesn't know any of the unwritten rules, right? So he's just doing all the stuff that no lawyer would ever do, but you got to be prepared for it. So yeah, it's quite different.
I remember watching a pro se object to every question that the prosecution was asking and saying, he's badgering the witness, because they were hard questions, 100% not badgering the witness, but every single question was objection, badgering the witness, which is not an objection either. It's asked and answered if you really want the proper objection. But like, you have this going on with the jury right there where it's like, I don't know, is he badgering them? And it's like, we're just asking questions. Like, this is literally what happens in the court of law. We ask questions. You may not like the questions, but that itself is not a basis for the objection. So we could go on and on. It is not
citizens
fun.
Are the worst,
it is
too,
not
because they're
fun.
like objecting based on the fringe on the flag and everything, and you're like,
and
I
then
don't know,
the
Your Honor.
filings. The filings are like incoherent, right? Like, I mean, they can be handwritten and they quite literally make no sense. Talk about conspiracy theories. You want some good conspiracy theories? They're in these filings as well. And you have to respond to them. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Every time something's filed, even if it's a made up motion, there's real motions you can file, but they will make up motions like motion to, I don't like the way you're looking at me. And you're like, that's not a motion, but they've moved the court to do something, and the court, in order to rule on it, wants to hear from both sides. Counsel, I need you to respond to this. And you're like, what? Am I really responding to this crayon covered motion that's made up? And the answer is yes.
And what's funny, if a lawyer filed that, the judge would just
Sanction.
deny it. Yeah, and sanction them. It wouldn't make us respond to it. But whenever it's a pro se, it's like, well, you know, if you end up doing their job, you're like, well, Your Honor, I know he styled it as a motion for a declaration of innocence, but I think really this is a habeas corpus petition under 2255. And, you know, if you look at it sideways in the mirror, then he's making this argument. And so maybe we should address that. And it's just like, why am I doing this? Like, I don't want to do this. But it's the job of the prosecutor. We do justice. I'm just trying to win. So sometimes you even have to help out the other side. All right. Well, this has been fun. I mean, not really, but it's always good to spend time with Alice and with you guys. We will try and do something. I mean, it's going to be true crime, so it's not exactly going to be uplifting, but we'll try to do something a little bit less dark
This
next
was like
week.
beyond dark.
Yeah. Maybe only one person can die in the story we do next week. I haven't decided what we're doing yet, but I'll try and find something. Maybe aliens will be involved. I don't know. We'll figure something out. But, all right. You guys know the drill. Let us know what you think. We'll be back next week with an uplifting tale with alien abductions, maybe. But until then, I'm Brett,
And I'm Alice.
and we are the Prosecutors.
There we go.
So Othram's off solving some famous case.
Like
So-
literally.
Even
Literally
as we
doing.
speak.
Isn't that awesome?
So they had to reschedule.
You can't make that up. That's so cool. That's the best reason to cancel a recording.
They said they would come on and talk about it once it's public.
All right. It's jumping there, isn't it?
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's not. But,
I know it's not.
but that would be cool if it was.
It would
Yeah.
be. All right.
God, Joe, don't be so negative, Nelly. So we get to do some more Piggy stuff. That's great, right?
Piggy,
Everybody loves piggies.
piggy. I can't tell. I can't tell if it's him frozen or me frozen. You guys can hear me? You just let me know if you can hear me. Oh, thank you. You can hear me. I froze for a second because I was like, am I frozen? Is he frozen? Okay. Well, oh, he just said his internet went wonky.
This October, Fear is free on Pluto TV with horror movie collections from Paranormal Activity, The Ring,
You will die in 7 days.
Scream, and From Dusk Till Dawn.
This is my kind of place.
And don't miss the man-made nightmares in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein or the world-ending chaos in 28 Days Later.
Something in the blood.
All the scares, all for free. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
I earned my degree online at Arizona State University. I chose to get my degree at ASU because I knew that I'd get a quality education, they were recognized for excellence, and that I would be prepared for the workforce upon graduating. To be associated with ASU, both as a student and alum, it makes me extremely proud, and having experienced the program, I know now that I'm set up for success. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.